Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views the News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about this ongoing tension all along the line of control where few of our soldiers have been martyred, many have been injured, and then there was a befitting response from the Pakistani side and a lot of casualties were also reported from the Indian side. Now since we live in an area, when you talk about this LOC, the line of control primarily, the population is mostly they're Muslims all along the LOC on either side of the line of control. But interestingly, since Pakistan do not fire upon the civilians, but the Indians do, and using heavy weapons, not only injuring or causing casualties on our civilians, but also on our forces, our defense forces who are deployed all along the line of control. And this has been going on for the last God knows how many years now. Only this year, more than 2,000 violations from the Indian side have been reported. These were the incidents of unprovoked firing using the RPGs, the heavy artillery also in certain cases in certain areas. And then there were reports that they are accumulating a lot of forces and most likely they are planning either for a false flag operation or most likely they plan to attack Pakistan. According to certain reports, very weird kind of soldiers have been seen. When I say weird, doesn't mean that they look like aliens or something, but they were not Indians. And a lot of people believe that they are Israeli soldiers and officers who are also patrolling all along the Indian soldiers in that part. Now that is pretty worrisome also, not only for Pakistan, but for the entire region, what exactly is going on. But this Hindutva, if you have listened to the Chief Minister of the Uttar Pradesh, you must have noticed the kind of venom that man has for the Muslims, the kind of dress he wears, and the kind of language he uses. That tells the story. UP is the main hub of power for the Indians primarily. But this is happening all over India now. More than 100 cities practically are in the line of fire because these Muslims are on the roads protesting, not only Muslims, but other minorities as well, whether Christians or Sikhs or Dalits, or you talk about Parsis or Jains for that matter. These people are on the, and the kind of brutality that has been witnessed over the period of time because there is no media coverage. The media is not at all, Indian media in particular, is not at all covering. A lot of other private media channels are not given access to those areas. So this is the name of the game now. Many people have been killed according to sources, more than 3 dozen. But the actual death toll could be much, much higher. Thousands have been arrested, put into jails and are tortured. Many have been injured. Straight firing incidents have taken place. People have been shot in their chest and in their heads. So you can well imagine the kind of trigger-happy military of India is. Now, this is an ongoing scene, and it seems that the aggression of India is not only limited within their own territory. Their aggression and their design is primarily for Pakistan, and I'm talking about, in particular, the Kashmir region. Now, to talk about that, let me introduce you to our panelists, then we'll also show you a very interesting clip. But first of all, my guests in my studio, they are Air Vice Marshal retired Faisal Saab, needs to introduction. He's a senior analyst, is the Vice Chancellor of the Air University, Islamabad. So thank you very much. And we have with us Imran Saab, who's a senior columnist, journalist, writer. Thank you very much, sir. Before we proceed, sir, we'll just show you a clip and then we'll proceed from there, sir.
This movement intellectually understands and emotionally and passionately understands the horror of this Hindutva program that the Modi, BJP, RSS has been selling for the last so many years. They only have this as the one answer to every problem: economic, social, education, whatever it is. Their idea is to ratchet up the hatred, and they're going to shed blood. I mean, they're already killing people all over the state of Uttar Pradesh because that is where they have the most vicious chief minister. They just hold power in, I think, 3 or 4, and 10 chief ministers have already said that they will not allow the National Register of Citizenship. They have not said that they will not allow the NPR, which is the soft entry to this. I think people still have to understand that that's a very dangerous thing.
The courtesy to Al Jazeera television channel, and you've also heard what Ms. Roy just said. Now, she is a very credible journalist, Amir Saab, and she says this man means business. And the only thing you'll hear is about this Hindutva mindset, Hindutva concept. And interestingly, I was listening to him, and you know what he said, sir? it's not only limited to India. He said we'll take it out. Now, what exactly he meant by that, sir? Your take on that?
Well, we've been talking on these programs about the program that BJP has always carried, and RSS that has been, and Pakistan, and nothing less than Pakistan's Prime Minister reminded the UN Security General Assembly that Mr. Modi is reincarnation of Hitler. And that was recently, I think last week, taken up by a German newspaper, where he showed Mr. Modi as a baby being picked up by Hitler and being shown around. So that's the concept that has been going around. The very act, if you look at this particular Civil Citizenship Amendment Act, it actually alters the right of citizenship. And not only that, by doing that, it also alters the identity of that nation, where a secular nation, where India had been always pronouncing with lot of joy and lot of pride, being a pluralistic society. And certainly it goes back and it proves what we had been saying all along, that it is not a pluralistic society, it is not a secular society. It is actually seething with anti-Muslim hatred. And that is what comes out right in this. And if you look at this pattern has been going on for the last minimum 5 years, but as long as it goes back to 1925, when the RSS took up the ideology of then Hitler and endorsed them, and that's the way it has come all along. And what you look at today is that this particular year has been very bad for Pakistan and Indian relationships.
I think
and particularly worst
year.
year, and this has been going on since Mr. Modi's previous election campaign. It has been spewing venom against Muslims, not only against Muslims, Pakistan as well. And this is what you see in this particular year after the February 2019, February, the Pulwama incident, and then the Balakot alleged strikes and our response to it. What you see is a gradual escalation. And what you actually saw was in August this year, when Mr. Modi, true to his constitution and true to his party's constitution, revoked the status of Kashmiri people, and not only that, but also rescinded the act that provided a special status to the Kashmiris, 35A.
Yeah.
So, and soon after that, what you see is now this particular bill coming up, the citizenship.
So this is actually a part of their manifesto.
So what you
also.
see is a gradual implementation of their
agenda,
ideology, and their party manifesto. So there's nothing. I think we probably believed in the good-natured, jolly image of Mr. Modi when he went abroad and showed his smiles. I think down inside, he has been always planning these things.
Venom.
And what probably he left these things to was his Mr. Hamid Shah and the Chief Minister of Ayodhya. I think that is what he has been letting them do these things.
Hamid Shah is his right-hand man, sir. Look what happened in Gujarat. I mean, he was the main man. He was the architect of the killings and everything.
So what you see today is in India, from north to south, the entire India is, not the entire India I would say, but all those people who think that the Indian constitution has been violated. If you go by the votes in the assemblies, yes, Mr. Modi had no problem getting these bills sailed through.
Oh yes.
Not in Lok Sabha, neither in Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha was more.
It was close, not close, but still, I mean, yeah. But over here, you know, it was overwhelming majority in the lower house.
Typical division that there were people, almost 99 to 100 people against 115, those who thought that the Indian constitution was being violated. But Mr. Modi has probably no qualms about the constitution itself. He says that he has his own party agenda, and that is what is happening. And now what is dangerous is that the internal strifes that the India is going through for the last, I would say, more than a year, including Kashmir, Assam, and the recent strifes, it is becoming a threat to the regional peace. Because now, just I think a couple of weeks back, the statement by Mr. Bipin Rawat, the military army chief, that the situation along LOC can escalate at any time.
Was that a threat?
That was an open threat. Yeah. That was open threat. Not only a threat, but also probably assuaging the ego of their political masters, that yes, if you have a problem, we can divert the threat, divert the attention, the world attention from the internal matters to a place which has always been a flashpoint. So what the world looks at Kashmir is as a flashpoint between two nuclear states and possibly three nuclear states. Not only two.
You can't rule out China,
yeah. So what you see is a definite attempt by the Indian leadership, both civil and military leadership, hands in gloves, to take away the attention away from what happens inside,
yes,
and to the and provoking Pakistan. Now, you mentioned about 2,000 ceasefire violations. The Indian press claims that there have been over 950 violations in the last 3 months. So that's the pattern that is escalation is developing.
Like
so 950 means in 90 days, 950 means that there have been probably 10 violations every day. So that is a lot of violations happening between two nuclear weapon states, and that is very dangerous, and that purely is because of the agenda that Mr. Modi is pursuing these days.
Now, sir, John Saab, couple of points. There were very, very authentic reports that the Indian military is, obviously we know the number of soldiers deployed inside Kashmir, and that is around 1 million. Military forces, BSF, other law enforcement agencies, police, and you name it, and they're there. And with some very strong draconian laws, I mean, you can't hold them accountable for anything even if they kill people, and they've been doing that. Nothing has happened so far. But so there are reports that there are other fresh troops. They are assembling all along the LOC, even Rawalakot was named, and there are certain areas where they're gathering, and there were reports that there is a very high probability that they might strike. They have also moved their strike corps. I think, if I'm not wrong, sir, there are 3 corps deployed there at the moment, and just imagine the kind of ammunition they'll be having and the kind of support they're having. So primarily, if you look at this kind of a mindset where the government is totally supporting the military, the government has gone bonkers, the military chief is coming up with stupid statements of attacking. I mean, people talk about peace, and this character is talking about attacking the neighboring peaceful countries for that matter. Are we actually heading towards kinetic engagement, sir, with the Indians?
Most likely there will be some level of skirmish, and that's exactly the strategy of the Indian administration right now. I am not surprised, and I wouldn't be surprised if they indulge Pakistan with some level of a slight skirmish. I will hesitate calling it a war, because both are nuclear armed states and they cannot go to war with each other because both will be completely destroyed. And that exactly is the strategy, because when you have actually it will be very hard to digest, but I'll say this is actually bad news for India and good news for Pakistan, and I'll explain that. The fact that when you indulge in such gross human rights violations inside your country, and some external foreign power pressures you to stop that, then the result is usually a reform or some sort of a fake reform. What we are seeing in India is not some sort of reform, but rather some external possible war with Pakistan. That tells us that the trouble is not external for Pakistan, for India, it's actually internal. The people inside India are protesting, even Hindus are protesting.
So what I'm getting is that what you're saying is primarily because just to divert the attention of the international media and the local media and the kind of protests that are ongoing in India, just to divert that, they might open up another front, so that becomes the headline, and that becomes something on the back burner.
And even the some support base that Modi always had, that is now getting disappointed with him. It is very easy to rally the people around the flag when you mention some external threat, and it's always easy to go to West, blame Pakistan. Any trouble that happens, there was some organization in India that just recently mentioned, because remember, 60 million people do not have access to internet in India. I'm not talking about Kashmir. I'm talking about inside India, the so-called democratic state. 60 million people, that's about the size of France. That's about twice the size of Canada, 3 times the size of Australia. Those many people cannot access internet right now. That is suppression of free speech. The New York Times actually yesterday had a very interesting report about this political science young student. Her name was Nidhi Tiwari. Her entire family comes from the region of Varanasi, which is where the Ganges River is. That is a very strong support base of Modi. She said that my whole family and I myself was a very strong supporter of Modi, and her exact words was, "We always thought he was a hero, now we think he's a monster." Her exact words. She used the word monster. And remember, that's a Hindu student. That's not some Muslim student or some non-Hindu who's protesting. Modi knows that. Modi knows these troubles are happening right inside India. The internet is blocked. Even the great-grandson of Gandhi is protesting. The biographer of Mahatma Gandhi is in jail also. There's a lot of trouble inside India, and BJP itself lost state elections in Jharkhand this week.
Yeah.
So I mean, all these troubles tell us just one thing, that the trouble is inside, not outside, because the United States just last week, or maybe this week, released a report called the Countries of Particular Concern, CPC, which was a list of countries where religious discrimination happens. And somehow India was not in that list. The very week when the law was...
and who was, by the way? You know
Pakistan was in it, Saudi Arabia.
That's exactly what I'm
Pakistan was absolutely there. And so there's another report that
these are the biased reports, because Indians have such influence in USA.
Yes.
I mean, they're sitting everywhere. When you talk about the universities, you talk about the
Think tanks.
publishing think tank. I mean, anything.
Everywhere.
So they don't let
Congress people
anything.
and
I mean, they're
senators.
buying time from the Western media, and they're promoting India in a very lucrative way. And on the other hand,
And they have interests, you know.
and
There's-
because
there's
they have
money
understood the
involved.
name of the game, sir.
Exactly. So the point is, there's no external pressure. Had that been the case, we would have seen some reform. The fact that the pressure is only internal, Modi is telling his own people, you know, we got to go and deal with Pakistan because they're creating trouble at the border. It's very easy. That scapegoating has worked for them for decades. You know, just go and blame Pakistan. And that is exactly what we are witnessing right now. That is exactly what is happening. And the German student who came to protest was deported right away as soon as he was singled out, you know, among a very large crowd. So the troubles are there for India. I am not surprised that they are going to start a mini war or a war light, if you will, with Pakistan, so that the attention could be diverted, the attention of the people, not the foreign media, not the foreign governments like European countries or the United States for that matter, but the very people inside. And remember, the reason I said that's good news is India is a nuclear armed state. Militarily strong countries cannot be defeated militarily. The only way they're going to go
Exactly.
down...
Now we need to understand exactly, because you know, you need to have certain very solid institutions in order to counter that kind of aggression. Military is not the only solution. It has to be the Foreign Office. It has to be your media.
Yes.
It has to be the people in various think tanks. I mean, it has to be a collective effort. Now, sir, if you allow me, we've been joined in by the Foreign Minister, Shah Mahmood Qureshi sir. Shah sahab, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Shah Sahab, thank you very much for taking out your time and talking to us. Sir, first of all, the kind of aggressive statements that we are receiving from the Indian chief, the Indian Prime Minister, the UP's Chief Minister, sometimes the Home Minister of India, and everyone in particular, sir. My straight question, is India practically threatening Pakistan? Are they going to have some sort of a kinetic conflict in the coming days? Because sir, things are very hostile, very aggressive on the line of control, and we have also learned that they are really accumulating all sorts of corps, aggressive corps, intelligence corps, attacking corps all along the LOCs. Your take, Mr. Saab?
Well, you cannot rule out anything. As you pointed out, they have taken a number of steps which are aggressive in nature, and we have pointed them out to the Security Council and to other key important countries and governments of the world. particularly the P5 countries, in which I have identified what steps they have taken. For example, deployment of missiles, BrahMos, and the Spike missiles. Uh, you know, uh, Placement of new troops, uh, cutting the fence in different sectors. These are all very provocative, and the constant uh, uh, violations of ceasefire that is there. And I am of the view, and I have pointed it out on a number of occasions, that as pressure builds up uh, on the Modi government, and the protests are spread all over India, they might get into some kind of a diversionary uh, show, and the most likely place is the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So you cannot rule it out.
Now, sir, since you have obviously there are a couple of factors which are directly involved. The military is there, and I'm sure whenever Indians are planning to do something of that sort or a misadventure for that matter, we will give them a befitting response. But, sir, the Foreign Office, you've mentioned that they have also engaged themselves with the P5 countries, and they're also telling them about their concern to all the major quarters. Now, sir, two important points. One is that since there is no contact between Pakistan and India, we used to hear that the DGMOs sometimes they used to talk, or the BSF commander was, and the uh, our commander over here, or for that matter, there used to be an exchange of words, and they used to come up with some sort of solution, and situation would diffuse. Recently, it's not happening. And the aggression which we have witnessed over the period of time, and especially our Prime Minister has also mentioned. Sir, if they are looking at some sort of a false flag operation or a misadventure, do we have any idea what sort of an adventure that could be, and what sort of a strategy do we have in our mind to sort of counter that?
Well, a false flag operation cannot be ruled out, as I said earlier. Uh, they have, uh, they have done something like that. Pulwama is a case in point, uh, to sort of build support that was waning just before the elections, uh, and to create a nationalistic frenzy for their for their objectives, political objectives. Pakistan is prepared. Pakistan armed forces are on alert. They know what they can do, and they are prepared to respond and give them a befitting response in case of a misadventure. We've informed the diplomatic community. We have raised this issue at different levels, and we will continue to do so.
All right, thank you very much, Asaf, for your comments, sir.
Thank you.
Now, the foreign minister also believes that there is a very high probability of some sort of a misadventure from the Indian side. So we have been doing so many programs on these issues. If you remember, Donald Trump, once he was asked this question regarding India and Pakistan, and he very categorically mentioned that we'll use India to counter Pakistan. Remember, sir? And after that, the things got slightly better between Pakistan and India. The Prime Minister went there, and then after that, they had a couple of meetings also. But sir, the kind of support the Americans are giving to the Indians, intelligence sharing, you talk about giving them 200 top of the line drones to look after the Arabian Sea or the Indian Ocean for that matter, providing them with F-21s. I mean, that's like in their bucket list, they're just trying their level best to sell those. Transfer of technology, you're talking about FA-18 Hornets for their Navy, you're talking about S-400 missiles from Russia. So Rafales for that matter, sir. So they are buying equipment from left, right, and center. Primarily, a lot of people say to engage China. But sir, I don't think there's going to be any war between India and China. But there's a high probability that those weapons could be used against Pakistan. But the moment we use any of our American weapon, what we earlier even used during the previous wars, the Americans would stop our support. So in this case, it's very evident, it's very clear that the support for the Indians is over here, and support for Pakistan doesn't even exist. So in that kind of a scenario, sir, what should be the strategy for Pakistan, sir?
Well, there has been a clear division in our region between allies. We have two different sets of countries supporting each other. Although Pakistan has been trying now to almost become a non-aligned country, almost in that respect. But what you see is the great Indian efforts at modernization of their military, and the number of wish list, the long wish list that you described. There have been certain things that they've actually acquired, and that acquisition, if not today, in 3 to 5 years' time, definitely is going to give that edge to India, that is military leadership will look for a larger misadventure in our region. What you see today is the Indian leadership, military leadership, and particularly spurred by the civilian leadership, they are definitely inclined to show their muscle. They inclined to show their muscle in on their western border. They inclined to show their muscle in the Indian Ocean. They inclined to show their muscles in the even in the Pacific. So what you look at is Indians desire to exert themselves as the third or fourth major power in the world. There's also what at this particular time, when you look at this particular time, all the hoopla that you see in happening in India is actually an attempt to divert their own people's attention away from the economic failure that India has failed in as experienced in the last tenure of Mr. Modi. So too many things, when they go wrong, then obviously the only pillar that you are left is to demonize your neighbors and to pick up arms against them, so that and that has been a common tool by the Indians, a very oft used tools by the Indians, that whenever something goes wrong, either in Kashmir or elsewhere, even in Bombay or elsewhere, before the second breath they take, they blurt out it's Pakistan. So what you see today is a repetition of those things. I'm not surprised that, and probably nobody should be surprised by the support that the Indians get from the Americans, from the even the Israelis. Actually, the greatest modernization in the Indian army and Indian military has done by the Israeli technologies, and it is not only the Israeli technology that is helping them; it is also the Israeli ideology that is helping them. What you heard, I think a week back or maybe a month back, one of the Indian ambassadors saying that if Israel could do it in Palestine,
why can't we?
Why can't we do it in Kashmir? So that's the actual Hindutva speaking.
AVM Saab, you have been a very senior officer in Pakistan Air Force, and Pakistan Air Force is recognized as one of the best in the world. There's no doubt, the kind of training pattern and everything. Sir, even if it comes to that level where it becomes inevitable, right? You know, if they do something, and most likely they'll do, because everybody seems to be on the same page. It's not how, it's when. That's the thing. So, considering our limitations as far as economy is concerned, so many other issues, foreign policy issues, what sort of choices do we have now, sir? Can we engage them at the kinetic level when you talk about the conventional warfare in a certain area? Because, sir, I was telling you that last night when I was watching with my kids this solar eclipse episode on YouTube, I was not only surprised, I really felt it deep inside me. When I saw the map of India, and especially in the northern side, they had attached Gilgit-Baltistan as well as Azad Kashmir in their own. So they have, this is not a joke, sir, changing the map of a country, and that also been on TV. I mean, that's like, this is their demarcations now. What is that supposed to mean?
Well, Faisal, when you talk of the options that we have, in my first remarks today on this program, I said 2 nuclear-armed states. Now, it is not only that I want to spruce up my statement, but it is actually very serious that we need to remind our people and their people that these are not any ordinary states, or not only one nuclear-armed and the other non-weapon state that we're talking about. We're talking about 2 nuclear-armed states with great stakes, for not only for the region but for the entire world. So the options that you talk I would be the last person to say that Pakistan should build up that kind of frenzy that the Indians have built up. War is not no joke. War is not the kids' play. War just means destruction. By nature, it means destruction.
War is not a solution for
So it's
India.
not a solution
It is
for everything.
itself a problem. Yeah.
But if Indian military has a debt, Indian military has a debt to pay, the debt of February to pay back, and they have to reclaim the face that they lost. I won't be surprised again a similar kind of misadventure by them, not on the probably on the ground, but again once again in the air. And I won't boast, but I think they would not be surprised once again by the kind of response they would get.
What AVM Saab, for example, I mean, the foreign minister was telling that they have also deployed BrahMos. I mean, that is one of their fastest missiles, which they have. If they have deployed that, that means that they're not only looking at the strike within a couple of kilometers, they have something in their mind. And what if that happens? Do you think last time our retaliation was tit for tat? I mean, you come in and then we went and we slapped them, and we could have actually shot down six more of their jets. You know that, sir. We did not. We locked them, and they know that. And we came back. Now, sir, what if this step one was there? Now step two should, if they're looking at it, is a much larger leap, and they are looking at certain other areas. Our response is going to be in accordance with their aggression, right, sir? And that could lead to a major conflict.
You talked of BrahMos. BrahMos is a hypersonic cruise missile that the Indians have developed in conjunction with the support of the Russians. What is actually BrahMos? It's a missile that travels at very large speeds, very fast speeds.
Yeah, it's very fast.
So what does it carry? A very small warhead. But that warhead, when it impacts at supersonic speeds, it creates
a lot of
a greater kind of destruction on the intended target. So what you see is, if Indians use BrahMos, probably they would be firing it across Kashmir, well into Pakistan. So it is not going to be fired right into Kashmir. And for that, probably they have a number of other missiles to fire. So I'm not attaching too much. Just the fact that they have BrahMos and the speed of BrahMos probably makes it difficult for the Pakistani air defense to
engage in the area,
to intercept it.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it is a missile carrying a normal warhead, and if that drops anywhere in Pakistan, that's a declaration of war. So I'm not sure that the Indians would resort to starting the conflict with firing a few firecrackers at very high speed. I think they should be very mindful of those things, that we may not be able to intercept those BrahMos, but then
they won't be able to intercept our missiles also.
You see, all ballistic missiles travel at supersonic and hypersonic speeds. So if they fire BrahMos at a very high speed, then probably there are missiles in our armory also that probably they won't be able to intercept. They have not been able to develop that kind of a anti-ballistic missile defense shield all over India.
But say you said the Israelis are there. What do you think? Don't you think
Israelis are
they
there.
could be helping them secretly developing certain shields to protect their airspace?
No, it's not only theoretically that you develop those shields. There has to be hardware wherewithal of that magnitude, and that means hundreds of billions of dollars of investment in those things. But definitely Israelis bring in those technologies that probably they could be very accurately mapping the topography of that area, and that measurement or those equipment that is accurately mapping the topography, it actually helps in accurate artillery fire. So that could be one of the advantages they have, that they have the Bofors, and they have also the Israeli guns, and they have the Israeli technologies. The drones comes from the mistakes that they made in Balakot, probably, where they could not feed in the elevation of the those targets, intended targets, and that's why their missiles they hit
the wrong targets. Not the targets, even they just
they drop dead. So I think those kind of mistakes the Israelis are now, and that was I think that was the aim of the Israeli help, that they let them engage military targets through artillery more accurately, and that is a dangerous proposition in Kashmir.
All right. Your take on the same point, sir?
So just to clarify, and it's actually, maybe if Faisal can confirm this, the missile shield, that's a first strike weapon. It's a very aggressive move, whichever country does it. When you install that shield, it's called a shield. You know, theoretically, people might understand that it's supposed to protect against an incoming missile, but it's supposed to strike first. That's aggressive. That's a war move. You know, when you install that, that itself is a declaration of war, as good as I understand. Again, Faisal can confirm that. But you mentioned about how U.S. is not really saying anything and the world community is not making that noise. One can use that.
The US is so biased. I mean, that's
It is
so
biased.
open now.
And one can use that as a case study. I don't know how to prove this, but there's a strong correlation between U.S. alliance. When a country becomes a strong U.S. ally, somehow its atrocities and aggressive moves increase because they know that the country that usually, you know, stops other countries from doing such things is not going to say anything. And that is exactly why, as you mentioned, Pakistan will be lectured if it indulged in any little move in its own defense. And again, Pakistan will be doing it in defense, not offense. India is the one that is indulging in offense, and still it would not
But is
be.
the world going to look at it from our perspective or their perspective?
Absolutely
that is so
not.
important.
The world is going to look at it from their perspective.
Yeah,
they
that's
have
what I'm saying.
billions of dollars investments,
Absolutely,
and
sir.
billions of dollars of profits probably from India. And again, those billions are not going to benefit the people of India. They're only going to benefit certain corporations and some strong leaders on top of India. And that's exactly the point that I was making earlier, is that it's these people who are creating trouble for India, and that's exactly why India cannot be defeated militarily. But it's such implosions and self-destructive moves of countries, when they indulge in that, that result in their implosions. And that's why I said it's good news. We should just let Modi, you know, follow his propensity to destroy his own country. That's exactly what he's doing. Remember, nobody in Pakistan, as Faisal mentioned, nobody in Pakistan believed that India was a secular state. Guess what? Modi also doesn't believe that. So we are actually on the same page on that with Modi, and he's actually proving it. He's going a step further and proving it to the world that India is not actually a secular state. There was an interesting news report. It said the Hindus inside India, and which is a strong support base of Modi, they believe that all Indians are Hindus, which means they believe that people who are not Hindus, Muslims, and other belonging to other faiths, they were forcefully converted to other faiths, Islam primarily. And that's why now they believe in forcefully converting India into a completely, because 80% is Hindu anyway, and they want to convert the entire India into a Hindu state. The CAA and the NRC are designed to expel any or imprison any Muslims and stop any incoming Muslims from other countries, you know, from Afghanistan and other such, Pakistan and Bangladesh. So these moves.
So they want to make it a 100% pure Hindu country, right?
Exactly, and that could be
Hindu
big
extremist
trouble.
country, let me rephrase it.
And that could be big trouble for India.
For India, not for the region, sir.
There will be there will be a
They have
some
China in the
trouble
north,
region.
Nepal, then they have Bangladesh, a Muslim country on one side, Pakistan, another Muslim country
There
on
will
the
be
other side.
trouble. There will be trouble, but if you ask me honestly,
What about the fate and the future of those 22 crore Muslim living inside India, sir?
a lot of trouble. There will be a lot of trouble for them. There's already trouble for them, even for Hindus. And that's exactly what many people were saying when August 5 annexation of Kashmir happened. Many people said, this is not going to stop here. These tentacles, these moves, these authoritarian moves are going to reach India also.
I still remember
and that's what
when they imposed curfew in Kashmir. I remember I did so many shows on that, and there was this analyst, I'm forgetting which one was that, but he said something very interesting. He said, you know what, this is the beginning. Now you're talking about fifth day of curfew, fourth day of curfew. He said these days will convert into weeks, weeks into months, and you shouldn't be surprised that those months could be converted into years.
Yes, and these moves will reach India also. Amit Shah, the fact that Amit Shah, the Home Minister, is a right-hand man of Modi, not his Foreign Minister, not his Army Chief Bipin Rawat, but Amit Shah is his right-hand man because he wants to take that experiment from Kashmir, then now in Assam or other areas of India. And he even said that he's going to replicate that across
over.
India.
All over, yeah.
And you know, the NRC experiment basically. So the fact that his right-hand man is the home minister tells us a lot about who the real enemy or real trouble for Modi is. It's the people inside. It's those people, it's these moves that can, you know, lead to a a lot of destruction for India, implosion. That's what I believe is going to, that's where they're headed to.
All right.
You know, that's
now sir, last minute or so, so quick comment on what do we need to do now, sir? How to, I mean, obviously the aggression is there, the monster is right there, with the open mouth. What do we need to do?
Well, the very impression that comes to my mind of Mr. Modi is a dragon blowing fire outside in all directions wherever he looks at. So when he is blowing fire at the Muslims in India itself. He's blowing fire at the Kashmiris.
We need to shove a hose pipe in his mouth now.
That's what we need to do. He's going to blow fire across the border as well. I think we need to not only remain alert, but also to continue to bring awareness, continue to talk to our friends, continue to probably keep reminding the UN Security Council and UN itself that there is a danger, there's a flashpoint which is going to erupt any time. Beyond that, I think we should be avoiding any kind of escalation from our side, because as you mentioned and as Mr. Imran mentioned, that the world is going to look at it from the Indian point of view. So we should, while we remain ready to reply any kind of adventurism by the Indians, but I think we should also be very careful in not letting it escalate.
So,
I strongly believe no legal or human rights mumbo jumbo is going to change India's calculus, Modi's calculus. I think we only need to defend our own country strongly. Of course, keep our allies everywhere, talk to everyone, but let Modi go on destroying his country. I think he's doing that, and we should just let him do exactly that while defending our country. Of course, as you said, there could be trouble in the region. Of course, there will be trouble.
He's put his
I'm willing to pay that price of
house
trouble.
on fire, but the problem is that
the heat will reach us.
We are feeling the heat of that fire also, no? So that's the problem. But anyway, Imran Saab, thank you so much. Always good to see you. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you on Monday, inshallah. Till then, you take good care and have a great weekend. Khuda Hafiz.